sure.
You want me to go in there and
Yeah, there's a button. You don't have to turn it off. Just turn it off. Just go in.
go through
Go
that?
to that door there. All but one family lives within 5 miles of me.
Oh, okay.
My children. I've got one is in Columbus,
Oh,
and she's got the 4 up there.
so how many kids did you have?
I have 4.
Oh,
I have one boy. We actually got out of the hospital yesterday.
oh, what's the matter?
He probably it's just they couldn't find anything wrong with him. Thank God. Maybe real acute indigestion or GERD or whatever they call it, acid reflux.
Oh,
So I have one son and 3 daughters, and I have 9 grandchildren.
okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you questions, not just about the Lamberts, but about your own life and what you know about this region. And then if whatever I ask you a question, like if I say, what is your name, can you put my name is, because my voice
Okay.
is going to be cut out of the tape.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a short introduction so people know what this is. My name is Deanda Johnson. I'm interviewing Mrs. Corliss Miller at her home in Bidwell, Ohio, on August 10th, 2007, for the African American Presence in the Ohio River Valley Oral History Project. Mrs. Miller, can you please give me your full name and please spell it for me?
Okay, my name is Corliss Miller. That's Corliss, Miller, Miller.
And what's your maiden name?
Borden, Borden.
Just say my maiden name is.
My maiden name is Borden, Borden.
Okay. And can you please tell me your date and place of birth?
Okay, I was born in Evergreen, Ohio on July the 7th, 1944.
And were you born at home or in a hospital?
I was born at home.
And was your mother attended by a doctor or a midwife?
She was attended by a midwife. Her name was Rome Harrington. And I met her after I had grown up, and she told me, I caught you, which was a term I didn't realize they used at that time.
Now, was she an African American?
Yes, she was.
What do you consider your family ethnic or racial background to be?
It's a mixture of French, Indian, African American, and white.
And which race or ethnicity do you identify with?
Black race.
Can you please tell me the name of your parents, starting with your father?
Okay, my father's name was Ernest Leroy Borden Jr., and my mother's name was Gertrude May Johnson.
And where was your father born?
He was born here in Bidwell, Ohio.
And do you remember his date of birth?
July 17th, 1913.
And how about your mother? Where was she born?
She would have been born in Glen White, West Virginia, in April 15th, 1913.
And how did your parents meet?
They went to school together. I have a picture of them in grade school together, so I'd say they met in grade school.
And where was this grade school located?
In Bidwell. There was a little colored school in Bidwell back in the day, and that's where they attended school.
Now, how did your mother get from West Virginia to Bidwell? What made her family move to Ohio?
I really don't know. I'd say my great-grandfather might have worked in the coal mines, and then when he passed away, then they migrated over here. And I don't know if we had any relatives or anything or what reason they would come to Ohio, but they did, or up here in Guyot County.
Can you tell me the name of your father's parents?
My grandmother's name is Lydia Denny Borden, and my grandfather's name was Alec Borden.
And do you know where they were born?
No. Did you forget about this?
Do you know approximately when they were born?
No, I really don't know. Grandma was quite old when she passed away on my dad's side.
And how about your mother's parents?
My grandmother's name was Anna Roden Moss, and she was married like twice. And my mother's father was a Johnson, and then she married, maybe she's married 3 times. because she married Jack Moss later on. But I don't know, any more than I was saying a while ago about coming out of possibly North Carolina on that side of the family.
And what is your husband's name?
My husband's name is Glenn Miller.
And when was he born?
April the 28th, 1940.
And what is, oh, you already said that. Where was he born?
He was born here in Morgan Township.
And how did you meet your husband?
Gosh, only knows. Just around. We were always around together, and he was just around.
How old were you when you met him?
I was probably about 16.
And how long did you guys date before you married?
Probably about a year.
So how old were you when you got married?
Almost 18.
And can you give us your date of marriage?
We were married September 30th, 1961. 61, yeah.
And where did you get married?
We got married at the preacher's house in Bidwell.
And do you remember his name?
His name was C.M. Payne. I showed you a picture. Well, he's in that book that I showed you. C.M. Payne.
And did you guys have a big wedding, a small wedding?
No, just real small.
And who attended the wedding?
My sister and a couple of my cousins.
Were your parents there?
No.
Can you please tell me the names of your children, their dates of birth, and where they were born?
Okay. My son, Mark Owen Miller, he's 45. He was born January the 14th, 1962. And then my first daughter, Glenna Marie Miller, was born November 5th, 1962. And our third daughter, Janine Ann, was born November the 11th, 1965. And Crystal was born December 16th, 1970? 71? Somewhere in there. 70, I think.
And where were they born?
All at Hosier Hospital.
And where did you attend school growing up?
Okay, first I attended the colored school in Bidwell, the Bidwell Colored School, for the first 6 years. And then I attended 7th grade and 8th grade at Bidwell Portland and North Gallia High School.
And what was it like going to a colored school?
Well, that's all I knew, so wasn't a big thing. So it was just school.
Now, were the teachers colored, or?
Yeah.
Do you remember some of the names of the teachers?
I had Miss Bernice Borden. Miss Bernice Borden for the first 3 years, because there's 3 grades in a school, in a room, first, second, and third. And then in the next year, I had Miss Bill Anderson and Miss Dorothy Thomas in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Is that Beulah Anderson, the one that
Yes, ma'am.
was born in poverty?
No, that was Bessie.
Betsy Johnson. Beulah is the...
She did the history booth
the
and all
church.
the stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, okay. So she was a school teacher?
She was a school teacher.
Oh, okay. Now, after going to the Bidwell Colored School, was the school you went to integrated or segregated?
It was integrated.
And did you notice a difference between going to an integrated school versus the segregated colored school?
I don't know as I was all that aware of the differences. I know we didn't get first, of anything. And but really, did I really feel like I was slighted or anything like that? Just certain times, maybe the teacher did something towards one of the students that I thought was excessive, and it would always be one of the black boys or something was picked on, and the phone's ringing. Then I felt the difference. But as far as really feeling slighted, not really.
Now, did any racial incidents happen when you were in school?
Oh yeah, we had a bus driver who wanted to make the black kids sit in the back of the bus, and my mother would not go for that at all. So she went to the board, and there was quite a bit of stink on that. And of course, my brother was kind of ornery, so one day we went out and we caught a big old black snake and put it in a jar and took it on the bus, and we got to sit ready to sit anywhere we wanted to.
What did he do with the snake?
Well, we let it go, but for that day, it got us to seat anywhere we wanted to sit. That's where we got to sit. And eventually what they did do, though, was get a little bus, with a black driver to pick up all the black kids.
So the buses were segregated?
This one little bus, just one bus.
How many?
And it came up the road and the same route that the white bus driver would go, just picking up black kids.
And was he paid by the school
Oh
district?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What year was this?
Oh, I don't know. I was in grade school at the time, so it would have been what, in the 50s? Yeah, sometime in the 50s.
So this is when you were in the middle school that had the different buses?
Mm-hmm. It was just the one bus in the whole county. That was only one bus. It was just like a little half bus. It wasn't a full bus even. It was just a little bus.
What year did you graduate from high school?
I didn't graduate from high school. I went back and got my GED and then went to college on that.
And how old were you when you went back to get your GED?
I was like in my 20s. And then I went to college when I was like 27.
And where did you go to college and what did you study?
I went to Rio Grande College, community college and college, got a degree bachelor's degree in teaching. And then I went to Dayton and got my master's in education.
So you were a teacher then?
Oh yeah, 30 years.
And what grades did you teach?
I taught 7th and 8th grade. Well, I've taught them all, but I ended up teaching major 7th and 8th grade language arts.
And what schools did you teach at?
Just Bidwell Port Elementary. I've taught at the same school I attended, that my parents attended, that all my aunts and brothers and sisters attended. I got to teach there and see all of my grandkids except 3 graduate from that school.
So that was the school that used to be the colored school?
No, this was the new elementary down on 160.
Oh, okay.
I taught in the high school. By that time we were, desegregated,
Yeah.
and we all went to the high school, or what was the high school. Then they built the new North Gallia High School, and then they turned the old school into a junior high or a regular elementary. We had 2 buildings over there, and they did away with the black school. And so I taught there in the old building for a while, and then we moved to the new building. I taught there.
Now, what year did they do away with the colored school?
I would have been probably about like 57 or 58, because I think Glenn graduated in 58. Maybe no sooner than that, maybe earlier than that, because I would have been like in junior high. Honey, you remember when they did away with the colored school? I had to remember. I can't remember how I was going from junior high, going to the 7th grade. When would that be? I would have been 7. It would have been like 52, 53, somewhere in there.
Do you know why they decided to do away with the school? Why did they decide to do away with the school?
It probably was economic reasons, I'd say, and desegregation too, because about that time it started in. The color school, which I always thought was an ideal that white people had to keep it separate, was really black people in Gallia County wanted that school so their teachers would have some place to teach. They just felt like if they didn't have a black school, then our teachers wouldn't get to teach. But when they did away with the black school, the black teachers went right on up to the other school and taught. I know it wasn't that easy, but they did. They had jobs.
Oh, okay. So they weren't out of jobs,
No.
they were able to find jobs.
It was a struggle with the school board, of course, to do that, but they did end up teaching at the school. Mm-hmm.
So what year would you say that you started teaching in the Gallia County School District?
About 30 years ago. That would have been, I don't remember, 79, somewhere like that.
How did you start to get interested in your family's history?
I remember being in school and not seeing any history for black people, And I remember the first time I was made aware that black people did anything was when we read about Harriet Tubman in 8th grade history. And I always wanted to find out about the Underground Railroad. It just was one of those things I just stuck with me all the time I wanted to do. So when I got the opportunity to do some traveling, when I got older and could afford it, we went south and did a lot of plantations and did a lot of history museums and did a whole lot of things like that, just to bring me in touch with the Underground Railroad. And then got interested in Underground Railroad here in Gallia County and did research on that. And I'd say it was the Underground Railroad that really got me started into history.
Now, growing up, did you hear stories of the Underground Railroad in this area?
No.
So when was it that you started to hear, 8th grade was the first
History, when I read about Harriet Tubman, and I said, I want to find out about the Underground Railroad, and that's what I've done.
And what have you found out about this region and the Underground Railroad?
It's rich in Underground Railroad history. The big holdup for me is there's no maps now available of what was like back in that time, because when our courthouse burnt down in Gallipolis a few years ago, all those plat maps were destroyed of what was noted property back in Underground Railroad in the 1800s. And I cannot find where those actual spots were in Porter, down the road here at Porter. There were several Underground Railroad places, and I cannot find a map to tell me exactly where those places were. So that kind of leaves me but there were like 7 or 8 different lines that came through Gallia County, Underground Railroad lines that came through Gallia, leading through Porter, up to Benton, up to Wilkesville, out of Black Fork, different places, Rio Grande. Now, Bidwell itself was never part of the Underground Railroad. No notable thing about Bidwell, but this area here, Morgan Township, quite a bit right up the road. They had different incidences with but the only thing, the big puzzle there was the people that lived in Morgan were freed blacks, and they would help the Underground Railroad, but they had things like patty rollers, they called them. They would take free people back to South. These people were never touched. I never could understand that. But they would run the Underground Railroad, in Morgan up here. There were houses where they're safe houses where they'd come and they'd take them to the next stop. And there's all kinds of stories about incidents that happened on the Underground Railroad there.
Now, was there a community of African Americans in Morgan Township? Was there a settlement there?
Yeah, that was the Lambert lands. And then there were freed people there, though, before the Lambert slaves came. The Jameses and Howells and all were already up there. So they were already free blacks up there when they came.
Now, what have you learned about your own family's involvement, if any, in the Underground Railroad?
I wish, but no. I wish I had a connection. I wish I could find that my family came through on the Underground Railroad. Anything, I'd like to have that connection, but I don't have it.
You've talked about Underground Railroad history. How about slavery? How did you learn about slavery?
Same way, and it was always, one of those things in history where you kind of kept your head down, ashamed of what blacks went through, but you just touched on it. You never really learned the whole truth behind it. And then I studied about the Underground Railroad, I saw the struggle that our people went through, trying to get free, and how they were treated and brought over here in slave ships. And that was one of the things you did do. You saw the slave ships, in history. And you felt, at the time, it was something to be embarrassed about, But after you learn a little bit, you get over that and find out you didn't do anything wrong. You were the victim, not, I just wanted to know more. And then, of course, watching things like Roots, different stories like that really brought home what it was like for our people to come over here on slave ships and then suffer the degradation and everything that they did as slaves. It's just, my granddaughter was here last weekend when we was watching Roots, and I'm sitting up there getting angry and teary, and I've watched it so many times, but it still has the same effect, So that's how, just the more you learn, the more it stretches out. And if you're going to do the Underground Railroad, you're going to learn about slavery. So that's how.
Now, you talked about that often when slavery was talked about, blacks were embarrassed. Why do you think there was such an embarrassment?
I think that's a carryover from the way we were indoctrinated, that you were less. It was something to be ashamed of, like it was, you weren't as good as, so it was an embarrassment. You were ashamed of what you were back then.
Now, what stories about slavery were passed down in your family?
We didn't pass it down. It wasn't passed down in my family. We didn't talk about it. It just wasn't talked about.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know whether they just didn't know, or was it still a taboo, that you didn't talk about that kind of history, or they maybe not just didn't know about it.
So you mentioned that you started to learn about your family coming from North Carolina and being on a Meadows plantation. How did you get that information if it wasn't passed down in the
Well,
family?
just talking, but no real in-depth discussion of what slavery was like, or just that, my grandmother came from North Carolina. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've not been able to research it and find out that they were on a plantation called Meadows Plantation. I've researched, tried to find Meadows Plantation. I can't find anything on it. So, it's just a little bit of talk, not real in-depth, not asking enough questions of your parents before they. So I encourage kids now to talk to their parents, find out what your history is before it's too late. Because I don't know enough about my mother's side of the family to really. But I'm hoping to go to Nebraska where my aunt lives. I have one more aunt and a cousin out there. That's where my grandmother lived and died. And the rest of my mom's family was in Nebraska. So I'm hoping to get out there one of these days and get into the family Bibles and different things like that. Maybe find some things out about my family history.
And what's your family's last name?
Um,
Johnson?
My mom was a Johnson, but my mother really was a Meadows. I'll put it that way. My grandmother married a Meadows, then a Johnson, then a Moss. Okay, she was a well-married lady. But my mother was really a Meadows. But when my grandmother married her Johnson, she took that name. So I'm looking under Meadows for my mom background. Find him. His name was Thomas Meadows. Her dad's name was Thomas Meadows. So I'm looking under that name plus the Johnson name, just trying to get back to my mother.
Do you know where in Nebraska?
Oh yeah, they live in Omaha, Nebraska.
Well, on a side note, we might be related because that's where my family are. And we're
Well,
Johnson.
they just moved there. They just moved there from Arlington.
Oh,
They didn't grow up out there. I don't know, for some reason my aunt went out there and lived, and then all the rest of them, she brought them all out there. But my mom, she stayed here.
Oh, okay. Now, the moss that your grandmother married, is he connected to the Poke Patch mosses?
Yes, Jack Moss.
Do you know what his connection is?
No, I just know he was the bell ringer over at the church. Whenever anybody died, he towed the bell.
At what church?
Black Fork, Union Black Fork. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about growing up in Bidwell? What was it like growing up there?
Well, I didn't live in Bidwell. I lived about 2 miles out of Bidwell, and so I didn't socialize very much with most of my brothers and sisters. And the only time we really went to Bidwell was like if we went to church. And when we went to church on Sundays, we walked 2 miles to church. I heard the kids hear that. We walked 2 miles to church in Sunday school when the weather was good. We didn't have a car per se. My dad died when I was like 5 or 6, and there was 8 of us in my family, and we had twins that were like a year old when Daddy died. So Mom had to go to work, and we just didn't have everything. We were poor, very poor, and we had to walk to church and stuff like that. And we played with each other, close family.
So, was your house a farm or what?
It was just an old farmhouse, but we didn't have like a farm. We didn't have any animals or anything like that. We raised a garden, stuff like that, but we didn't have.
Now, how close was your nearest neighbor when you guys lived out?
Oh, they were right up the road. We had to walk like a long driveway to get to the bus every day, and we had neighbors. My great aunt lived right up the road, less than a quarter of a mile. It wasn't very far.
Now, you mentioned that your dad died when you were 5 years old and your mother went to work. What was your mother's?
Housework. My mother did housework. That's what all the ladies did back in the day for like $8 a day or something like that.
And how long did she do this work?
Forever. Seemed like until, I don't know, forever. She just worked all the time.
Now, what kind of homes did she work in?
Oh, she worked for like lawyers and things in Gallipolis.
So how would she get to work?
There was a neighbor up the road. His wife did housework, and he would pick them up and take them in, or just catch a ride.
Now, you mentioned you were poor, but did you know you were poor growing up?
Not really.
Why?
Didn't realize it because we were happy. We always had food on the table. We didn't have the best of clothes. My mother sewed and made all our clothes, or for the girls anyway. And we didn't have a lot of money or stuff like that, but we had a roof over our head, and we were together, and we were happy.
Now, how did your mother balance taking care of the kids and working outside of the home?
Well, I had sisters older than me, and we were, when I think about Jack and Jill being little, I really don't know how they, I was only 5 myself, so I didn't pay attention to things like that, how the babies were taken care of. I think my aunt, Virginia, used to come and stay with us and take care of the kids, and the rest of us would be in school.
How about chores? How did you?
Oh, Lord. You had to get in the coal, get the wood, water. We didn't have a good well at our house, so we had to go to my aunt's to get water, so we had to carry water. I remember when it was dry like now, we would take our clothes to the creek and wash our clothes at the creek and spread them out on the bushes to dry. We'd have fun. We'd pick berries. Anything that needed to be done, you did it. You took that Saturday night bath. Whoever got in there last got the dirtiest water, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Now, how old were you when you got your first, quote, job?
I used to work with my aunt, my great aunt, but it was just like getting in her coal and her water and feeding her chickens or stuff like that. I was probably about 13, maybe 12, something like that. And I would go up and I'd do that for her every night, every day. She was a cranky old woman. And I was telling somebody the other day that she had some whiskey in a glass sitting on her table, and it evaporated. The alcohol evaporated. She told my mother that I drank her whiskey, and she wouldn't pay me for that week, my $2, So she died, and I filed against her estate and got my $2.
So how old were you when you filed against her?
Probably about 12, 13.
So did your mom help you, or how did you know?
Well, I don't know. I said, I just did it. I don't remember. I just know I did it. I said, she owed me. When you turn in bills to someone's estate, well, I turned mine in, and I got my $2. Yeah.
And what would you do with the money that you made working for your aunt?
I don't even remember. Probably just buy pop or candy or whatever.
And what was the aunt's name, if you don't mind?
Her name was Elvira Black.
And was she married, or?
She hadn't been, but she was a widow.
What kinds of activities? Oh, sorry. Before we go there, was most of the food that you guys ate purchased or grown?
We bought a lot. We grew some stuff, but like I said, pick berries, canned green beans, apples, anything, because we had a lot of fruit trees on the place, stuff like that. But we purchased like milk, bread, stuff like. We didn't do all that making bread and stuff.
What kinds of food did you guys eat growing up?
Chicken, beef, beans, cornbread, stuff like that.
Now, where would your mom purchase the food from?
We had a little store in Porter that you could run an account, with, and pay it once a month.
And was the plumbing outdoor or indoor growing up?
Didn't have no plumbing. You had a well and water, and you were the only plumbing. You had an outdoor toilet, and you carried your water.
How about electricity?
We had that.
What are some of the things you did for fun growing up?
We played a lot of games. We were outside all the time. Good imaginations. We had our own different little play areas that we played. We played in the creek. Same creek I live on now is the creek that ran through our property. And we played in the creek. We just played cowboys and Indians was a really big thing. We were all cowboys. We'd ride trees. We'd just do kid things.
How about when you got older and could go out and hang out with your friends? What type of activities did you do?
I didn't get to hang out very much with my friends. We'd go to parties maybe once in a while, but as far as just going to the movies and things, didn't do it. Go to skating ring once in a great while, but I just didn't have the money or, to do all that stuff.
Do you remember how old you were when you saw your first movie?
When we went to Arlington to my grandmother's house, we'd go to the movies every Saturday. So I was like 8, 9, We'd go see Cowboys, Roy Rogers, Johnny McBrown, Gene Autry, those kind of things every Saturday, if we didn't get in trouble.
Now, in Ironton, was the theater segregated or integrated?
I don't remember. I don't think it was.
How about roller skating?
I don't roller skate to this day because I never really went enough to learn how. And that was the big thing in Gallipolis. You go to the skating rink every Saturday night. Well, I didn't get to do that. So.
Now in Gallipolis, did they have black night or for skating, or could anybody skate?
I don't think they did. I think on Saturday night everybody went skating.
You mentioned that your family attended church. What church did you attend growing up?
I attended Mount Carmel Baptist Church at Bidwell, Ohio.
And can you tell us a little bit about the history of that church?
It's been around forever. What years? 1903 is when they built it. And it was, at first they started having church in the schools. And then as the population from Porter and Bidwell grew together, they built the church there at Bidwell. And it's had several pastors. When I went to school, the church there, we had Reverend C.M. Payne, and you mentioned him several times. And we've had several pastors over the years. But it was, to us, it was our center, because that's the only place we really went regularly was the church. And if you did anything, Scouts was at church, Children's Band was at church, Youth Choir was at church, or youth groups, or everything was church-oriented then for us.
What denomination?
Baptist.
Now has your family, do you know how long your family has been Baptist, in the Baptist faith?
As long as I can remember, my grandmother was a charter member there.
And which grandmother was this?
That would have been Anna Moss.
And how often did you attend church?
As often as the weather would permit us to walk there, we would attend church. Yeah.
You mentioned some activities that were associated with church. How did religion influence behavior growing up? Like, did it influence the way you could dress, what you could eat, what you could do for fun? Were there certain things you weren't allowed to do because you were Baptist?
Oh, well, not really. They encourage you not to dance, but, you know. Our first, second, third grade teacher, Miss Burns Borden, was also our Sunday school teacher until I was like 12 years old. And she was my children's band leader. You know, it was same person had a very big influence, was very influential in your life. And she was that person. You know, we really respected her, scared to death of her, but we respected her because she was strict. And she expected you to act like young ladies and gentlemen no matter where you went and what you did. But she was a lot of fun too. She could be a lot of fun.
How were the church records kept?
They have a lot of the old church minutes out at Mount Carmel. You know, when they first started out, how much lamp oil they had to buy, a penny for the lamp oil and all that stuff, what the collections were and all those things. They have all that in minutes.
And when we were talking before, you mentioned about if somebody did something that was...
They would church you. That was what you were talking about. If somebody did something like dancing and you got caught dancing or something like that, they'd put you out until you apologized to the church. You'd have to get up in front of the church and apologize.
And and if you didn't apologize, what would happen?
You were a member you were in good standing, so they would what they call withdraw the hand of fellowship from you. You could still come to church, but you weren't, you didn't get all the benefits of church. Like you didn't take communion and stuff like that.
You said dancing was one of the things that could get you put out. What were some of the other things that?
Drinking, of course. Anything more immoral, like that. Drinking, chasing women or whatever they did back in the day, or whatever. Not taking care of your family, that kind of stuff.
Do you remember, how did the civil rights movement affect this area, or what effect did it have on this area?
I was thinking about that too the other day. I was talking to someone. I can remember watching the civil rights movement on TV and thinking, oh, how terrible that was. But as far as just in Gallia County, I don't remember that it had a whole lot of effect. Now, other people who were more involved might have, a different response to that. But me personally, I could remember watching it and thinking, that's terrible. Those dogs, and all that stuff. It was really terrible. But I was right then. I was a new mother. I was, more family oriented than community oriented then, and the riots and Watts riot. I remember watching all that stuff and thinking how terrible it was, but really not really connecting with it.
Now, did you guys think you had a race problem in Gallia County, or was that just something that was outside of here?
No, we always knew there was racism in Gallia County, but it was like a subtle thing. You very seldom ran into real blatant racism in Gallia County. I personally never had a real blatant thing happen.
When you say subtle, what are some of the subtle things that were racist?
Well, you knew that there were certain places that you could go, or certain things you could do, and certain things you could be, certain jobs you could get. You know, nobody came around out and told you. You know, and again, I personally didn't experience that per se. When I started teaching, my principals told me that before I got my degree, I want you at my school. You know, so I didn't, you know, and then I had a lot of people say, "Oh, you're just a token." I said, "That's okay. Get me the job. I'll be a token. I'll keep my job myself, but you go ahead and get me the job." You know, but that was, you know, more on my racist attitude, you know, that you're just a token, you know. And I said, maybe, but I'll have the job, and I'll keep it on my own abilities. But as far as just, you know, really running into real blatant, I've really not really experienced it. Anybody ever getting in my face and telling me anything like that.
What were some of the places you knew you couldn't go?
Well, like the swimming pool in Gallipolis. I never went there anyway, but I've heard Reverend Armstrong say there were only certain days that you could go swimming as a black person. That would be like on Monday because they're going to clean the pool the next day, you know, or something like that. In Arlington, I guess I did have, in Arlington it was the same way. Blacks could go swimming only one day a week. And then I remember being little and going to Camden Park, but you could only go on Mondays once a year. Once a year. It's like an amusement park in West Virginia, and you could only go blacks could only go one day a year. And I remember my aunt taking us once, and then after we got older, we took our kids one time, and we said, "Oh, we're not going back there no more," based on our experience as youth. You know, they want us now, but we are not going back there anymore.
How about in places like restaurants and different things like that?
I don't know, because I never got to eat at restaurants and things when I was little.
Just going back, growing up, what kinds of illnesses did family members experience?
My dad died of a cirrhosis of the liver because he liked to drink a little too much. But just colds, standard stuff like that, major.
And how were things treated?
Well, every spring we had to take a spring tonic, and we would take castor oil. We would take, not the white stuff, not that nice stuff the kids take now, and a little bit of turpentine. We took things called Hadacol and Father John's, and we would get a half an orange. That was the good thing. Get that half orange, which we took all that nasty stuff.
So every spring you guys would take this tonic?
Mm-hmm. And we never got sick hardly at all.
When would people see a doctor?
Oh, gosh, it'd have to be an emergency. I don't remember. The only time I remember going to the doctor when I was little is twice. Once when I had poison ivy real bad and it got in my eyes. And another time when I cut my arm on a piece of glass. And those are the only two times I think I've ever been to the doctor when I was little.
What are some illnesses or diseases that people suffer from now in this area, in your family?
Cancer, heart disease, sugar diabetes.
And are those things that people now are pretty good about seeing the doctor about, or is there still some people still are kind of don't see the doctor?
I think they do better at it now, you know.
If you could just talk a little bit about the research that you and your husband did on the Lambert lands.
Okay, that was inspired by my husband and Mrs. What's her name? Esteban Matthews, because she grew up in that area and she knew a lot of the blacks in the area, and she just wanted to do something to make a memory for them, because there were a lot of people in Morgan buried that didn't have tombstones and everything. A lot of people she knew. So she called Glenn up and they got together on it, and they decided they wanted to do something. So they decided they was going to put up a monument. And it really just got mushroomed. You know, we formed a committee, and we had this story about the Lamberts with the three brothers, Frank Miller and Menace Lambert, coming to Gallia County, purchasing land and bringing their slaves up here. That was the story we started off with. And when we started researching, that just didn't come out. And we went to Columbus to research, and we did all the research we could do here in Gallia County. And it was summer, so we decided we'd just go back to Virginia, Bedford County, it's where it all originated from, and find out what we could find out. And when we went down there, we were looking for Frank Lambert. And we went to the Historical Society first, and they sent us over to the courthouse. And we went over to the courthouse and started just looking through books for Frank Lambert. Nothing. And I remember sitting there, we'd been there I don't know how long, looked through I don't know how countless books. I remember telling my sister, I said, I'm gonna look through one more book. If I don't find anything, I'm out of here. You know. So I just started looking through this land property book, and I looked down and I saw the list of slaves that I knew their names. And I said, I found it, because I didn't say it that way. I found it, and it was a Charles Lambert. And this is just a short kind of a thing of what we found. This is back in 1836 on the original slave owner, Charles Lambert, and it talks about what he wanted for his slaves and all that he was willing to do to make sure they were set free after his death.
Can you talk about a little bit about what this says? Do you know when he freed his slaves?
Was that in 1839, wasn't it? Yeah, and this talks about he was a slave owner in Bedford County, West Virginia. And his statement was, and it says here, it is my will that all my black people of every age or sex should be free. And he was leaving all of his property to be sold towards that purpose. Now, according to what we found out, when he passed away, everything he had was to be going towards that purpose, buy wagons and food and everything, make sure they could get to Ohio. Why they bought land in Ohio, we still haven't found that out yet. And after he died, well, they didn't come right up here right away after he died, but they stayed on the plantation and they farmed out to other people to earn more money, to have funds to come up here. He left an executor that, got it all together, and then they came up here and brought the slaves up. They had their wagons and all the food and stuff they needed to get here. But what was strange about Charles was when he died, in his will, he said he wanted to be buried with his black people. He also had slaves that didn't come up here that he set up down there in Bedford, made sure they had places to live and everything.
Do you know, was he buried with his slaves?
I really don't know. The land where he's buried on is private land now, which we didn't have access to.
Now, what year did the slaves that he set free come to this area? Do you know what year did they finally get here?
It was like, what, 1843. He knows all this. 1843, yeah. So this was several years after 1939 when he all started. In our research, we did find the will that he wrote. I think this is it right here. It's kind of hard to read it in this kind of writing, but this was the original, his original will here, with the official handwriting and stuff like that, which I've tried to transcribe it into English so we could read it easier. But this is the original right here.
Now, how long did he make this will before he died?
That was done in 1939. 1839.
And when did he die?
About a year after that.
Do you know what made him make this decision to free his slaves? Is there a story why he decided to free his slaves?
I don't think so. I don't know. We don't know the back of that ground with him.
So if you could tell a little bit about the myth that was held in the families before you guys found this information.
Okay, if you look in any magazine article, newspaper article, before we did this research, you'll find the story of Frank Miller and Menace Lambert were 3 slave owners that were to have come to Gallia County, purchased 265 acres for to set their slaves on free, and brought up 30 slaves to Morgan. Okay, when we started researching it, we found that wasn't true. That wasn't at all true. It was just, Frank Lambert was really a slave himself, and there was no Miller and Menace Lambert. Okay, the names Miller and Menace were the slaves' names before they came here, and so when we went and researched it, we found like I said, we found the original will with the slaves' names on the bottom that he set free that came to Gallia County, the 30 slaves, original slaves. And then we researched and went to Richmond then and found the description of the slaves, what they looked like, which made it more real. And we found his father's deed, Charles Sr.'s deed, and different things like that. And then we found the property list of what they sold, what they were worth, the slaves themselves were worth, and everything. So it was totally different from what the story had been passed down for years.
So where did you guys find this information?
We went to Bedford County, little town of Bedford in Bedford County, and we also went to Richmond, Virginia.
Now, how long was this land in the family's holdings, these descendants of the slaves that were set free?
I think they sold the land in, 1960, the 60s? Somewhere like that.
And why did they sell the land?
Taxes. Yep, for tax purposes, because it was, I don't know where this fly comes. It was all taxes. It went down for taxes.
And at the time that the land was sold, how many of the descendants were still living in that on that land?
I don't think there were any living on the land at the time. I think the last family that left there were Cordells. Lil Cordell and her family were the last ones, I think, that lived on the land. But they were all off the land before it sold. Yeah.
Do you know what made people move off the land?
Well, there was no living, nothing to, no jobs, or there was nothing up there to really, houses were all ramshackled, nobody to take care of them, and stuff like that. So younger generation left, the others died off, and the younger people just left.
Now, did the younger people go far, or are they still?
Columbus, a lot of them still here. But mostly in Columbus and here. They didn't go anywhere.
Well, thank you very much. Is there any information that you would like to add to the interview before that, something I didn't ask you that you think needs to be said? Nothing. But I just wouldn't change anything. I love the experience I've had, just the life I've had with everything that's happened, even from being a poor black child in Gallia County to, whatever I am now. It's just been a great experience. So no regrets, I love my family, the unity, the closeness of the community. It's great. Oh, one more thing. Can you tell us a little bit about Emancipation Day when you were younger?
Oh gosh, biggest day of the year, better than Christmas. It was always down to Bidwell when I was a child, at a place called Bush's Park, and there was this real long, dusty road you had to walk down. And if you knew anything about black people, we didn't have lotion, so we used like petroleum jelly on your legs and things, and of course all that dust would stick right there, and you'd get in your best bib and tucker to go, try to look good, and all crowds and bands, and I remember one of the outstanding things I remember is they used to have this little man come in, and he used to sell like little Cupid dolls on the stick, on a cane. Always wanted one of those. And we had things like contests. I remember the cracker eating contest. You had to eat a soda cracker and then whistle, and they give you a top. Always wanted that top. Never did win that top, or things like that. And we had a big food stand where they had all pies and cakes and all kind of fresh chicken frying it right in the skillet. My grandfather on my daddy's side, he was a step-granddad. Emmett Bunch was called Mr. Emancipation because every year he'd come out with his big top hat, and that's what they called him, Mr. Emancipation, and his little tail coat. And my grandma would come out, and it was just fun. I don't remember the baseball games and the horse races and stuff. That was before my time, but it was just fun, and everybody just came together, and we just ran around out there in the dirt and had a good time.
Now, growing up, did you know what the meaning behind Emancipation Day was?
It was just a good day to get together and have fun, and get to eat good food and see all your friends, and just, and then as I got older, you got to look at the boys, things like that. But no, as far as just why we were, what 22nd, we was called the 22nd, not Emancipation. It was called the 22nd because we always had it on the 22nd. And emancipation wasn't really mentioned to my attention, because it seemed like when you're young like that, you really don't gear in on things like that. It kind of passes you by. So I don't know we used to have all the senators and congressmen, people, but I didn't pay attention to people like that then. You know, they were up there speaking, and I was out running around playing. And so, but it was just a great day. You know, why we did it, the purpose behind it, what it meant to black people. I just knew it was really important because everybody would come.
Now everybody would come, blacks and whites?
Yeah, some whites, but you know, not as many, but lots of people would come from wherever they were at to come home for the 22nd.
And so it was always celebrated on the day of the 22nd?
Mm-hmm. Back then it was.
Mm-hmm. And what would happen on the 22nd? People would
leave their jobs, school, whatever it took. And then they moved it to a weekend, so the people wouldn't lose their jobs and things over it, because some people would.
So people lost their jobs over not being able to go to emancipation?
Right.
Now, was it a school holiday?
No, wasn't.
But you guys would just...
Mm-hmm.
Just one more question. You mentioned your mother remarried after your father died?
No, my mom never did.
But your grandmother?
Oh, my grandmother did. My grandmother married 3 times, but my mom, no, she never remarried.
And how old was your mother when she passed away?
75.
Okay. And what year was that?
1990. She was like in her 30s when my dad died, so she raised us as kids by herself. 8 of us, heathens.
Well, if that's all, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been a great interview.
Thank you.